Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan. And DigitalOcean. Go to digitalocean.com and use the promo code Here's the Thing, all one word like you're slurring it, and spin up your own Linux rig for free. And Linux Academy. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged and invest in your mind while saving some money. Welcome to Linux Action Show episode 437. My name is Chris.
My name is Noah.
Hey, Noah. Good morning to you. Guess what?
It's going to be a big show with a great app pick.
We have a fun show for you today with some app picks right out of the 90s. I'll tell you about those in just a moment. But first, have you ever wondered what software-defined networking is? What is that buzz term, and why is it actually important? And why the hell does the Linux Foundation care? They care a lot, too. Well, I went down to the OpenDayLight Summit in this last week of September to wrap my head around software-defined networking, how Linux plays a role, and the revolution that is happening across an industry. We'll tell you about that and a little bit of what it's like to experience something like the OpenDaylight Summit, a very tech-heavy, something that's still early in development with a big open source component. I'll give you a little taste of that. So we have that coming up in the show later on. But before then, in the news segment, Kodi boxes are piracy machines, according to law enforcement officials, and they are fighting the epidemic of Kodi boxes. We'll tell you what the hell is going on with Kodi, why you probably should care about it, even if you're not over in the UK, and maybe what might be happening, maybe on Kodi's end. We might just speculate what they might do to try to solve this problem down the road. And man, the story is crazy, including people going to jail and all of it. Then our friends over at Purism have a survey that they'd like to get your opinion on, and we're going to kick around their new project and tell you what's coming up with that. And then we've got an unboxing of a new rig as well as some cool upgrades, feedback. But before all of that, we've got those
amazing picks.
Yeah, those
best
picks.
ones we've ever had.
Okay.
The ones that Chris is going to use.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I am pretty jazzed up about this Runs Linux pick. I can't even imagine. I can't even know. I just can't. But somehow, back in 2015, Film World submitted a Runs Linux to us. That's a YouTube channel. And looks like it was a great video, a lot of effort put into it, and we just never had a chance to put it on air. So we want to right that wrong right now. This is video production that runs Linux from Film World.
Hello everybody, I am Micah Pendleton from the YouTube channel Film World, and this is my Runs Linux. So yes, I am Micah Pendleton from the YouTube channel Film World, and this is my computer. I switched from Windows about over a year now, and my first distro was Ubuntu in Linux, and I liked it a lot, and I definitely have not missed Windows, but I decided to switch to Fedora recently. Is that Noah smiling right now? Probably is. But yes, I'm now using Fedora 21 KDE edition. I really like KDE for my desktop. It's just a great desktop environment for video editing and things of that nature. And why does Weta Digital use it? Yeah, but I've got it on a custom-built computer. It has an Intel Core i5, 3.2 gigahertz quad core, 8 gigs of RAM, nearly a terabyte of storage, and a terrible ATI graphics card that I really want to upgrade to a nice NVIDIA soon. So hopefully by the end of the year I can get this machine somewhere where I want it. This is my laptop. It is a Dell Precision M2400 N series. It's a great laptop. I am running Fedora 21 GNOME edition. I really like GNOME for the laptop. I prefer KDE for desktop, and then of course laptop will be GNOME. The downside is it only's got 3 gigs of RAM. It did have 2, but I had an extra stick of 1 gig, so I put it in there. Hopefully soon I can double the RAM and get it up to 6 gigs. So this is a great little laptop, and I absolutely love it. My smartphone is, of course, it's a Samsung Rugby Pro, just running stock Android. I want to play with some maybe Tizen or Ubuntu Mobile on it at some point, but that's my smartphone.
Nice. You know, I bet he has an even more up-to-date setup now, since this is from 2015. He should send it in to us. Where do they do that? How do they do that? Now, how do people get their Runs Linux on the show?
Well, the fastest way, the most sure way, is to send an email to me, noah@jupiterbroadcasting.com. Of course, you can use the contact link. Well, I'm just saying, if you send it to me and I see my name in the
now
thing,
you're asking for it.
Less emails that are coming in there than they're coming to the contact form. But otherwise, you can go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click on the contact link, and those robots will also get that message to us. The best tip though is keep it short, concise, and have that video already uploaded to YouTube, because those will always take precedence over things that people attach or pictures or,
yeah, because here's the nice thing about it being on YouTube is we can link it in our show notes for people to watch afterwards that maybe are listening on the audio. But also, it's easy for us to pull it down at any speed we want, whenever we want, and store it offline. So it works both ways. It's great for the audience, and it's great for us, too. So, yeah, that's definitely one way to do it. The contact form makes it easy, and then you just upload your YouTube video or audio file, whatever you want to do. We'd love to hear about your setup. We'd love, I mean, it's always cool to do, like space laboratories, or what was there was a runner-up we had today. What was a laboratory that was in that video, that the runner-up video?
Yeah, it was basically about a guy that's working on warp drive, real Star Trek warp drive. But the cool thing about that was he had monitors all the way around the room, and they all had Ubuntu on it.
Yeah, and we've talked about, I can't remember the name now. We've talked about the laboratory once before, because there was a piece that was on them in the past, and it's like Star Trek warp drive, and they're using Linux to figure all of that out. And so the scale of it, from individual listeners and viewers to the freaking people that are creating warp drive for Captain Kirk's of the future, I mean, that's pretty legit. So that's Linux for you right there. Speaking of legit, DigitalOcean, that's how you can support this show and spin yourself up one of those legit Linux servers on their great infrastructure. DigitalOcean.com, and use our promo code Here's the Thing. All one word, lowercase, like you're slurring it. Just put it into your DigitalOcean account and apply it as a credit. And then you can go spin up a rig. Now, they have hourly pricing and monthly pricing. So you get a $10 credit. So a lot of times I talk about this. If you get a $10 credit, obviously you can try out the $5 rig for 2 months for free. And at $5, you get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, a terabyte of transfer, a CPU. Not to mention, you can deploy a base Linux system, FreeBSD system, or an entire application with the OS and all of the apps ready to go. Not using like magic sauce that like Noah will always tell you. Like he hates magic configs, and I don't like magic configs. And that is one of the reasons, even though I'd never tried one for probably the first 9 months, 10 months I'd used it, well, I don't know how long, but it was a long time that I used DigitalOcean. I never tried one of their pre-built rigs because I don't like magic config.
You didn't want magic config.
Didn't want a magic config.
Now here's your mission is to start converting Beard to no magic config.
Well, let me tell you something, and I'm not going to try to sway you because I know how strongly you feel, but when it came down to I want to try out these 3 web apps really quick and I don't want to junk up my system, I went, well,
OwnCloud.
it was a couple of different things, and I decided I'll just do this one-click deployment of, and I'm not like, I've set up Apache a trillion times in the past. I've set up Nginx like a dozen times. So, and I've set up Docker like a dozen times on Ubuntu because I usually use it on Arch. And so I thought, well, I'll try out their LTS, Nginx, I think it was Nginx, Postgres, Docker. I can't remember the combo, but it was exactly the combo I needed for the stack of few web apps I was going to use. And I did a one-time deployment of that, and I also did a setup completely from scratch because I wanted to do a comparison because I go, well, if I'm going to do this. And I'll tell you what, it was literally exactly how I would have set it up. They imported the keys I imported, the repos I subscribed to. They did the updates to the base Ubuntu system first to get it up in line. Then they go get the right packages from the individual repositories that are actually up to date with the correct keys. All of that stuff was done exactly the way I did it. It's just I had to do it by hand. And that was the moment. It was like, this isn't magic config. It's just properly configured right to a point. And then I had to build everything else on top of it, which is exactly how I wanted it. And I'll tell you, I still don't have that in any of my droplets that I remain in production today. Those are all still custom built from a base OS up. But anytime I want to just try something really quick, I do that now because I know they got a good config in there. I deploy one of those systems, throw the Docker image in there, try it out for 20 minutes, and then destroy the droplet. And I'm paying like, 3 cents an hour when I do that? Use our promo code, Here's the Thing. You could do that a dozen times with a $10 credit. And they got data centers all over the world, and they have really a great interface to bring it all together. This interface is sweet. Their API is really well documented, full-featured. And they also recently have a new tutorial up they posted on the 28th, an introduction to big data concepts and terminology. I know this stuff makes my head spin. And I honestly have been, if I could avoid it, I would forever. But people keep talking about big data and all this different kind of stuff. And so it's nice to see DigitalOcean just have a nice write-up that's concise, clearly edited. So when you need to go learn the vernacular, this is a spot to go. They got great write-ups over there. They really pay a lot of attention to that. And that helps even beyond the custom-built stacks or base systems. The documentation helps you take it up even further. You can use it in production. You can use it for testing. Just try it out. DigitalOcean.com. Use our promo code Here's the Thing. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Okay, Noah, dazzle me with your first pick, the desktop pick. I'm waiting.
One of the biggest questions I got after we did the ThinkPad review was people wrote in and said, hey, I've got a GSM card inside of my XYZ computer, and I'm running into this problem where I can't get the card activated. And a couple people asked me for the model of the card that I bought, and so I sent that to them. And then they bought that card and said, well, I can't even activate this. I need, and when you call support, obviously, they say, oh, we have this software package for Windows, and you just download that and use that. And then they say, well, do you have to install Windows on my machine? No, actually, you don't. The software that I was using to activate that modem card, in fact, and to the best of my knowledge, works with any broadband wireless card that requires activation. So if you go buy one at the store, you buy one of those little USB things, it has to be provisioned by the network. It has to be told like, I can do LTE services, I can do this, whatever. And that's particularly true with the CDMA carriers, Verizon and Sprint. They have to be activated, and that has to be initiated from the client side. So there's software for that. Modem Manager GUI, we have a link in the show notes, is the software that will allow you to do this. Now, it's nothing that is fancy or pretty. It's not going to wow you, but you only have to use it one time.
Well, let's be honest. If you've ever had to use Verizon or AT&T or any of their managers for their connections, they're not going to wow you either.
Yeah.
This kind of looks like a slimmed down version of those that I've seen in the past. With at least it looks like GTK, which is at least familiar and comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, and really, there's like three things you have to click on, but essentially, you launch the software, it will detect what your WAN modem is, and then you can go, and this is like in Russian for some reason, but the actual version is in English if you go and install it. But you go in there, and under the settings, then you can choose activate or deactivate, and then it sends that initialization string, and then that modem becomes active. And then from there, you can use the your normal network manager. Just drop down. It pops up as a little mobile network thing. You click on mobile broadband.
That is nice.
Yeah,
okay,
so you just have to use it the first time.
Okay,
or
that's cool.
If you change accounts or anything like that.
So it's GTK3, and you can get modem and SIM information, including device info, operator name, mode, IMEI, which is great for when you're trying to activate it, as well as the signal level, which I mean,
you can send texts right from the software too. I don't know why you'd want to do that.
Well, because these things do have SMS capabilities. I mean, so if you can, why not? But okay, so almost what gets me just alone, signal information.
Yeah.
To be able to have a GUI in Linux to know what the signal is on my MiFi or my LTE WAN connection, whatever it is. So just to recap, would you put the one that works for you under Linux in the show notes? Whichever, if it's a GSM, CDMA, put it.
The card, the card, the chip,
So that way people know kind of if they have something in there. So that with Modem Manager GUI, probably only going to work in the U.S., but, well, maybe. I don't know. You have to check it out when he gets it.
I haven't tried it outside of the U.S.
That is pretty nice. And, I could see broadcasting on the road wanting to have machines have their own. One of the ways I was thinking about instead of trying to combine mobile broadband connections on the road, maybe having this machine have its own mobile broadband connection and this machine have its own mobile broadband connection. Because I happen to have a friend in the carrier business who might be willing to work with me on this, so it's not like it's going to get nuts. And this could be a nice way to do that, is maybe the IRC machine and has its own connection, and I don't know. So I'll play with that. You're right. I might end up playing with it. Now, I don't think you've got me on the spotlight. I don't think so, but maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, warm me up, Noah. What you got? What you got?
A couple of months ago, almost a year ago, I had started transitioning over to FreePBX, Asterix now, and setting up my own phone server and doing things that way rather than the cloudy-based solution that we were using before. And since that time, we're now managing for a number of businesses, managing their systems, as well as one for Jupiter Broadcasting. So last Tuesday, I went to do a new concept for a show. We were using the Linux Unplugged spot. And for those of you that have been worrying in in your pants about Linux Unplugged format getting uprooted. That's not the case. We were just using that time slot.
Yeah. I was at the OpenDaylight Summit, which we'll be talking about today in the show, and so
exactly
we needed that time filled, and that worked out perfectly because, let's be honest, it's also a great chance to. I mean, it's an unplugged show, so it's a great chance to experiment with formats from time to time, and yeah. So I think it worked out well.
If it continues on, it would continue on as an entirely separate show. We would not be replacing Linux Unplugged. We value our mobile room too much. But I needed a piece of software that I could take phone calls, live calls on the air. And of course, it had to run on Linux because that's the box that I had hooked up to the mixer. And so I've played with a number of different software. I've played with Zoiper extensively. And about a year ago, I was playing with a software called SFL Phone, which was a great piece of software, but it was just very dated. And they have redone the software from the ground up, come up with a brand new UI. Everything is refreshed. They have new graphics. Everything is really clean and neat looking. And the new project, or the evolution of the project, is Ring. Ring.cx is their website. And basically what it is a SIP client. So it is a phone software client that runs on your mobile device or on your Linux desktop. And I used it extensively on Tuesday to take all of the calls. So that was all being powered with Ring.cx. And so we took
GPL 3, open, so obviously open source, active community, does end-to-end encryption, also supports certificates for identity management, OpenDHT protocol for discovering decentralized communication, peer-to-peer discovery. So I have it installed here too. I think I've had Ring installed since the day you set up the AirMaster computer for me. Let me see. Yeah. So I will tell you my main experience with Ring, although I do like the UI, but my main experience with Ring is, man, this son of a gun takes forever to build. This app, man, building it from source takes forever. But,
yeah, that's why I have a PPA.
Yeah. Really? You're doing that? Yeah, because there's not probably a binary. When you get started, you get like a QR code. What's this about?
So what it does, it's actually really cool. Let's say you and your friend have Ring set up, and you're both sitting on the same LAN, but you don't want to go through the trouble of setting up a PBX server. You can actually install Ring. He can install Ring, and then you can, over the network, discover each other or send your little Ring ID over to other people, and you can have instantaneously VoIP communication around your LAN without ever setting up a central server.
And it looks like I have one connection already set up that you probably set up a while ago, ready to go. So that's really cool. The UI is slick. You see the way it bops around when you click on stuff? That is neat. I
think it's really neat. And like I said, the fact that I was able to jump right into it, first time I've used it in a while, and use it on air while I'm doing 10 other things, and it didn't give me any problems, and I was able to do a show on it.
So if I put that QR code up there, can people call me on Ring?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think
God, that'd be really cool.
I'm pretty sure it has to be over a LAN for that to work.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. Well, and plus, because otherwise they'd have to have an intermediary server service to.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's only local LAN discovery, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so that is Ring, and that is probably one of the best SIP clients on Linux, but maybe one of the best SIP clients, period. I mean, I've messed with just a couple commercial ones on this old iMac that's in the studio, and they all were total dumpster fires, just dumpster fires. So Ring at least has a nice, clean UI that seems, I don't know. I haven't had a lot of experience with it. Maybe there's a SIP client out there people really love, but Ring was nice. The only downside I've had is you installed it like once, and then for some reason we don't use it. We use a different SIP client on this machine, which I don't remember
I think we're using Zoiper.
Yeah, Zoiper, which I don't remember why that is.
Because when I installed Ring, there were some issues with it because that was back. It was early beta days, and there were certain things that weren't working. But that's why it's the spotlight. I've used it in the past. I've tried it. It had some cool promise, but I'm telling you, at least as of Tuesday,
it's better.
It works. I can use it.
We should try taking calls in the feedback segment. See if it works.
Yeah, we could do that for sure.
All right. If you'd like to see some of our past picks, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks. And if you're getting up a new rig or maybe a new phone, or you want to find some great open source projects, we have a whole list there that gets updated periodically as we get people out there to. Often Mr. Tennell or somebody in the community that steps up and gets it done. So, all right, Noah, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com, last.ting.com. Won't you please visit there and support the show, and you'll get yourself a $25 discount off their service if you bring a phone. You'll also get $25 off a phone if you don't have one. Now, Ting is great. Both Noah and I are customers for Ting, been customers for a long time. It's just a couple of reasons. It's really simple, and I don't really have time for anything more complicated. You pay for what you use. That's it. It's $6 for the line. You bring a device or you buy an unlocked device from Ting. If that's it, if you don't get that, then I don't know what to say. I don't know what to, I'm out of here. Oh, I'm plugged in. I can't go.
Get back here.
I'm actually wired in. I can't go. Well, I guess if I have to stay, I might as well tell you more about Ting. Last.ting.com. Go there. That supports the show and gets you our discount. I think one of my favorite aspects of Ting is their dashboard. They have a really good dashboard. So good that I've never had to call their really great customer service. I think if their dashboard wasn't so damn good, I'd be sitting here telling you about how fanatically great their customer service is. I've only had to call them a couple of times, like once for myself, once for somebody else. How many times have you called Ting customer service in over 2.5 years now?
One time. I called them once. I had I had a phone, and interestingly enough, like I had a phone, and it was a Samsung S4 Mini, and I was trying to activate it, and I didn't realize that CDMA phone at the time. I didn't realize that CDMA phones needed SIM cards, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't activate it. Turns out I was the dumb one.
So they good? We're like, well, sir,
they sent me a free SIM card.
Oh, really? Yeah. I got a note from somebody the other day that got a postcard after they talked to Ting on the customer support.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that doesn't surprise me.
I know. It's so cool. Last.ting.com is where you go. And then even if you're not going to become a Ting customer, if you just want to learn a little bit more, swing by their blog while you're there. Spend a little time, because I have been a Sling fan now for a little bit. I run it on my Shield, Android Shield TV, and I'm a cord cutter, but obviously, as somebody who follows the news pretty closely, I love having live news. There's like a whole bunch of live sports on this thing too. Also, the History Channel and Food Network. That's like checks my boxes. So that's why I subscribe to Sling, because I can just stream these live television services when I need it. Sure. And I even do it over a MiFi connection from time to time. And it's gotten even better recently with improved hardware support, new shows, all that. Whoa, hi there. Whoa, hi there. All that goodness. So go check it out. They just did a blog write-up about it over on the Ting site. So start by going to last.ting.com and then check out their blog. And I guess I could also. That's interesting. I could put it on my phone. I never really thought about running that on my phone. It'd be pretty good. But there's never been a better time to sign up for Ting, because they just had a price drop too on their data. So go check them out. Last.ting.com. And a big thanks to Ting for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. So speaking of my Shield TV, probably the number one app I run on my Shield TV, as you guys know, is Kodi. Noah and I both fanatically love Kodi. We have Android boxes we run it on. We've had PCs we've run it on before. Hell, man, I honestly, I know I mention this from time to time, but it's true. I ran Kodi when it was called XBMC on the original Xbox, and I had to hack an Xbox to do it. So I've got a long history of using Kodi legally. And I think, as anybody knows, an open source project like Linux, like Firefox, can be used for legal and illegal things. It's just the nature of the way technology works. But
and torrents.
Sure. Yes, another great example. But and we'll get to why here in a moment. But Kodi boxes are now not just kind of getting a passing mention. They're like the source of a big crackdown going on. The Kodi boxes and other devices which can be configured to enable the streaming of pirated content are becoming key targets in a UK government intellectual property crime crackdown, revealing the extent to which the so-called fully loaded Kodi boxes are being used to circumvent copy protection laws. The Federation Against Copyright Theft, which stands for FACT, Federation Against Copyright Theft, FACT, has stated that half of its investigations currently center, I want to say that again, half of its investigations currently center around streaming devices using third-party piracy software add-ons. Half their investigations right now. Half their investigations. It's an international racket, according to the government's Intellectual Property Office crime report. We have that linked in the show notes. They released an annual crime report PDF. In the PDF, they say, we are aware that the set-top boxes, while perfectly legal in their own right, are frequently adapted by criminals to illegally receive TV channels protected by intellectual property rights, a spokesperson for the IPO told the BBC. Now, the IPO is that report. The government is working with its partners in the industry and with police forces across the country to target criminals looking to profit from this activity. We are also working closely with our international partners, to target the cross-border infrastructure that underpins the illegal streaming. Wow. Then the BBC runs a report. Piracy fighters battle the Kodi epidemic. The Kodi epidemic. I don't really have a lot to take from this article. I did like this one line though. That's a line that they took from a FACT representative, the Federation. Remember those guys? The Federation. This is becoming an epidemic, she says. If you're not paying for Sky, BT, or one of the pay TV providers for your subscription channels, you are clearly in possession of an illegal box. Remember, this, of course, goes back to where things are set up a little differently over there, where they have the subscription to get their televisions much different than the way that we do TV here. So they take violation of that very, very seriously, where we don't really, and people here cut the cord and still find lots of ways to get television service without having to pay some sort of licensing fee or whatever they call it. And then just a couple of more notes on this story. The Torrent Freak site has a pretty good breakdown of this UK IP crime report that we were just talking about. And in it, they talk about the fast-growing Kodi threat. This is the 2015-2016 report. It was just published a couple of days ago, revealing that infringement trends gathered from both governmental and private anti-piracy groups. Oh, I bet those are reliable sources. They show that this year, the online sector for IPTV and Kodi, torrent sites, and streaming ripping are seen as the main threats they face. Meanwhile, the report reveals that pirating internet subscribers will be receiving warning letters before the end of the year. They have jaw-dropping numbers. They said during a 3-month period last year, 28% of the questioners admitted their music downloads in the UK came from illegal sources. 23% of films, 22% of software, 16% of TV, and 15% of games were downloaded in breach of copyright.
So earlier this week, I actually sent, not this particular article, but one of them to Chris, and I said, we should talk about this on Sunday. And one of the things that has frustrated me since day one was when this great technology of torrents came out, all of a sudden a bunch of people started using it for illegal purposes, and then you have ISPs banning torrents outright because they're illegal and they're supporting this illegal activity. And what we've done is we have eliminated a very useful key piece of technology just because a select group of people are doing something bad with it. And now we have these media streaming devices, and I don't care which one you're using. I love local media.
Have you ever been on eBay and seen one of these fully loaded boxes that come with everything all set up?
I guess I've not seen one on.
So I have an example. I have an example advertisement. This is actually, I think, the guy that got busted that we're going to talk about here in a second. This is the advertisement that he ran on his Facebook page. The new TV entertainment center, only €69 or whatever. Funny money. It's not you. You get my point. It's like $80 American, real greenbacks. We give 30-day money-back guarantee on our stream box. You get all these movies and TV show box sets and more. Not just a TV box for all your channels, ? You get every film and TV show box set out, ! Latest CDs out. Live music TV updates itself on the internet. No dish needed. All TV sets with 12-month guarantee. Various secondhand TVs for different prices while stocks last. He gives his phone number, and then he shows a screenshot of the UI in Kodi where every show that's popular from Daredevil, even shows like Chuck, NCIS, and others are preloaded, ready to go on this fully loaded Kodi box. So this is brazen advertising here.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing. If you're going to intentionally set out to pirate stuff, I don't have a ton of sympathy for you, but at least from what I was reading, it seems like we're not making a distinction between people that are selling boxes with pirated that specifically are targeted for pirating TV and just people who want a box to watch local media. And the thing is, like, especially for our audience, there is no pirating Jupiter Broadcasting. You can download this show and every other show on the network for free. That's what we want you to do. And things like Kodi boxes, especially even if they are configured to have a bunch of add-ons to facilitate, easier use, that there are still ways to use that stuff for your local media. And then the last thing is that, and I try to evaluate everything in this light, is I'm not saying that stealing is ever right. I'm not saying that it's justifiable or anything like that. But what I am saying is that shouldn't we be focusing on things that you can actually control? And how can you actually, if somebody wants to pirate TV shows or movies, there's no real way to stop them. So basically, you're going on the honor system anyway.
So I think there's a couple of things in there that I want to respond to. The first being there is an interesting blame you could put on the criminals because, first of all, half these Kodi add-ons they're promoting indirectly or directly really suck. They don't work very well. They crash constantly. They typically, the feeds they pull from go offline. So they're real stinkers. And it's a real shame that not only are they just shucking piracy and using Kodi to deliver it and then tarnishing Kodi's name, but the product that they're selling sucks. I mean, that's just the ultimate insult. And then to zoom out a little bit, they were brazen with their marketing. I don't know what the hell that post was. That wasn't English. That was some chopped up crap that was in that Facebook post. It feels like a bullshit scam post to begin with. And then you're right. They're not making the distinction between Kodi, the platform, and the add-ons. Now, right. I think there is probably internally with this fact panel, they do seem to understand there is a differentiator there, and they don't seem to be going after the Kodi project itself. They're going directly after these sellers, like this gentleman. This guy is Brian Thompson. He's actually the first case in the UK for selling one of these set-top boxes. He's got a trial that's scheduled to start on October 27th, so coming up in just a couple of days. They're going after these guys right now. What I want to see, though, is what's the Kodi project going to do to try to respond to this? Are they going to take steps to do add-ons like this more difficult? Are they going to be compelled or pressured to have some sort of approved authenticated add-ons? Is there going to be a thinning of the approved types of plugins? Is this going to hurt the overall plugin market for Kodi? I'm not sure what this means for Kodi and its future add-ons because it feels like if this grows much, and here's the problem. Kodi's getting really good, and they're about to come out with another release that's like even better. Like they're really on the precipice of like one of the best standout open source main user interfacing products on the market. I'm talking about stuff average users interact with. They're up there as one of the best right now, and they're getting even better, which means they're going to see wider adoption, which means this pressure is going to grow, and I feel like they will have to respond in some way. Not directly likely, but indirectly by modifying policies or making it harder for this kind of stuff. Is that
really their job? Is it really their job to go in and try to police these other people?
Well, here's the thing. Do you want them to survive as a project? See, I don't want them to do this. I'm not advocating they do this. I want to make that clear. I'm saying that they might, for their own self-preservation, say, shit, we better knock some of this stuff off, or else pretty soon they're going to come knocking on our door. They're a few steps removed from the actual Kodi project now. They're going after guys like this Brian Thompson right now. That's who these lawmakers are focused on. But there will be a point in the future where after they've gotten some of these guys, they've gotten the low-hanging fruit. Somebody's going to make the argument, well, why don't we go after the software that's making this possible? And these people, they're not like super advanced power users. It seems like even if nothing were ever to actually come of it, the Kodi project eventually is going to find itself under some heat because two facts remain. The people that are enforcing this stuff don't have a clue what they're talking about, and the popularity of Kodi is going to continue to grow. And let's throw a third one in there. More people want to cut the cord than ever, and there's just not a lot of great ways to get great content easily on a TV box that works really great. And so Kodi checks a lot of boxes there. It seems like this is a problem that's going to increase for them.
I don't know. I think that's a fight worth fighting. I think that if I were in charge of Kodi or I were part of the Kodi team, I'd say, listen, we produce a product and we make the ability for people to custom write add-ons and provide those specific products or services through our platform easy, because that is kind of how we established ourselves. That's how we differentiate ourselves from an Apple TV or a Roku. And so some people are going to take that ability and they're going to do bad things with it. And there's really nothing we can do about it. And it's not our responsibility to do anything about it. And so if you don't like that, then go after the people that are making the add-ons. And if you can catch them and if you can somehow get code off the internet, good luck with that. Then you can pull them down. And until then, sorry.
I think that is a fine argument. I'll just go tell that to all of the torrent tracking websites that constantly get taken down, even though they don't host the files themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that you're not right in a practical sense. I'm just saying I think it's a fight worth fighting.
I believe they will make that connection. They will. Kodi,
sure.
Kodi will essentially become a torrent tracking site, and we've seen thousands of torrent tracking sites taken down, and they don't ever have to host the original content. They just have to facilitate the connection to the pirated content, and that I believe is the role they'll say Kodi plays, and then that'll be the pressure they're under. I wish you were right, because here's an example of a legit plugin. We've got one. The Jupiter Broadcasting add-on, we've got that linked in the show notes.
People pirating our content.
And it might need some updates, too. It's an open source. Rob Loach is the original author. I'm not sure if he's still updating it, or you could always poke him. Or if you see something that's GPL'd, it could always use some updates. I don't think user error is featured in there. Pretty sure user error isn't. And that's an example of that's not something we could maintain. Independent content creators rely on a community to develop that kind of stuff. We need a platform that's popular enough that they enjoy consuming the content on. And again, Kodi checks all those boxes, so I hope nothing happens to him. It's one of my favorite open source projects. All right, Pixel Pimp says he uses that. Yeah, there you go. See, thanks, guys. Yeah, a couple of people in the chat room are using it. All right, so by the way, chat room's here on a Sunday. If you'd like to watch live, you can, jblive.tv. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get that converted to your local time. It's noon Pacific. And when you're here, you can bang suggest, and I hope the chat room's doing that, to help title our show. And then we vote to the death at the end. And only one chat room person walks away alive. All right, next news story. So this is an interesting one. You remember the folks at Purism, right, Noah?
I do.
Purism, with the creators of my Librem 15 laptop. It was a project that I crowdfunded, and I think it was it 18 months later? It was very late, but we ended up eventually getting the laptop and did a review here on the show, and it had some problems. But overall, I like the design. It's a good piece of equipment. But because of those problems, I never am able to use it for serious production work, which for nearly a $2,000 laptop, that's a bit of a shame. But that was the gamble I took so I could report about it right here on the show, because what Purism wanted to build was a high-end MacBook competitor laptop with Linux users in mind, and not just technical Linux users, but also users who want their privacy and their freedoms respected. So things it wanted to integrate was physical kill switches and eventually get some of the binary blobs freed and things like that. That's still sort of, I guess, in progress. I'm not really clear where they're at because it still required their laptops, the Librem 13 that you reviewed how long ago? A few months ago. Yeah. Still required Intel's binaries and those kinds of things. So that, I think that work is ongoing.
But to refresh everyone's memory, I did have a better experience on the 13 than you had on the 15.
Yeah, the 13 did seem like a more refined machine, although I think you ended up still not giving it a fully enthusiastic review.
No, that's right.
So now they've also launched a tablet, which we've talked about kind of recently, although the Librem 11, an Intel-based tablet convertible device that has its own UI on it with their own Linux stack that supposedly does convergence, but I don't think we've actually seen any working examples, and I don't think anything's shipped yet. And now it sounds like they may be starting work, or at least preparing for work on a phone. And they've launched a survey to ask people what they want. Now, the specs of the phone are a free-scale quad-core system on a chip. They also have DDR3 RAM in the sucker with not quite sure how much RAM yet. It's in the survey. Supposedly, it could have hardware kill switches for the phone baseband, the microphone, and the webcam. So physical hardware kill switches in your handset. And they've launched a survey. I took it. It's kind of a long, in-depth survey. And they even ask you, would you be okay with a no-carrier version of the phone? So it seems like this is really maybe targeted at super geeks, potentially. It would have their own Linux UI on there, I believe. They plan to have fingerprint scanning. They say free software with bona fide GNU Linux stack, not Android. They say you can avoid corporate wiretapping, freedom-respecting software, and break the cycle of planned obsolescence imposed by most manufacturers, and it will have a headphone jack. What are your initial reactions to something like this?
The phone market is one of the most highly competitive markets out there. We have seen a decline in users of desktop operating systems, and it is accelerating downwards. In fact, end of the year, we go through and we review with a lot of our clients. How do we do? Do we meet your budget, specifications? And then that follows, that immediately precedes January, where I'm going to go sit down and we're going to lay out a budget and say, this is what we want to do in 2017. And here's all the equipment here's all the problems you want to solve. And here's all the equipment we need and all the software. And then they'll agree to it. And then 9 months later, they'll want to spend more than that. And then Their cycle repeats. And what I have seen anyway in this year is that all of the desktops and laptops that we plan to buy are getting almost no use, and all of the phones and tablets that we didn't plan to buy that they decided they needed along the way are what is doing the heavy lifting. In fact, I have a president of an organization now that has one of those that obtusely large Samsung tablet, you know what I'm talking about, like the 21-inch deal or whatever. And he has that on a stand on his desk with a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard, and he runs that. That's what he does his daily stuff on.
What is happening?
Here's why. We have a generation of kids, and actually, I have a better example. I have another CEO, large organization, and he's probably 31, 32 years old, so he's our age, and he has one of those Unify SIP phones, and if you haven't seen it, it's an Android tablet with a headset on it, and the thing about him is he said, I am so used to all of my apps and the way I do things on my phone, I want one of those on my desk. And so we went out and looked and found that Unify SIP phone.
All right, so bring this home for me. Bring it home for me. Where are you going?
So what I'm saying is that the entire world is moving towards these kind of devices, and Samsung and Apple are already heavily dominating them and taking those platforms and putting them in everything known to man, tablets, phones, everything else. So if you're going to come as a company and you say, I want to introduce a product and I want to compete in this world, you better have a very, very competitive advantage that appeals to a large number of people, or you're not going to make it. So to ask a simple poignant question, where are you going to get the hardware to manufacture this stuff? Because Samsung and Apple and Motorola and LG are eating up the glass and the processors and the phone bodies. And so what kind of phone are you going to be able to produce, and what kind of performance is it going to have if it's a device that's manufactured by somebody who is just now in 2016 entering the market, and you're competing with essentially markets that have started in 2002,
So, all right,
2001.
I'm going to take it. So here, this is what this reminds me of, and it's funny because I don't mean to give Count Zero in the chat room a hard time, but we joked more than a year ago. We joked about a faux show type phone, like if the Jupiter Broadcasting was going to make a faux phone. This was the faux phone that we came up with, and I think the reason for that was because we don't have any idea what we're talking about. We don't know what it's like to make a phone. We don't know what the limitations are, and also I don't know how you. I don't know. They must be very early in the process here because they're asking questions that would seem to need to be pretty much dialed in at this point. Like, how much RAM does it take? Well, that seems like that would be required by the software stack. That, how could you be asking me if I should put 512 megs of RAM in it or 4 gigs? That is a huge range that you should know how much the system's going to take. I don't think that makes any sense. There's questions in here about, do you want it to have cellular connectivity or not? That's a pretty defining characteristic of the product. Seems like that's something you should know at this point.
Well, so maybe they're not. Maybe what they're doing is they're looking at building a phone, not.
Of course, I believe that's where I'm going. So that's where I think we're at. And here is, I think, my first reaction was, well, this isn't something I necessarily need, but I think it's something that there is a demand still for a device that's running a bona fide, as they put it, Linux stack that you can tinker with. Something like there's been lines of phones that have never quite made it in the past that were really, really unique devices that were really compelling, but they never really reached scale. And that's a whole totally separate problem. The issue with something like this is Purism has a tendency to go for crowdfunding. And as I now see it, they have now launched potentially a third project without ever finishing the first project. And I'm still not clear who they're targeting here. If they're pitching the ultra elite geek user, then why do they talk about things in terms that geek users roll their eyes at? That anybody who really knows their stuff, they don't want your crappy custom OS that you just made at 6 months to a year ago. Nobody that knows their stuff wants that. So who are you pitching this to? So when you talk about an ultra secure OS with all this great protecting your privacy, which is one bullet point, and then digital security is another bullet point, and then avoid corporate wiretapping is another point, all very vague. Like you're talking to users that will be watching this on QVC. But then the only people who would be interested in a product like this are people that know what a baseband is. Why do I want a hardware kill switch for my baseband unless I know what that is? So, so again, a third project now where they've totally missed the mark on the audience. And it's kind of shocking at this point that they've even been around this long and they're still blowing it like this. Like they hyper sold the protect your freedom and your privacy on the laptops and then delivered laptops that were full of stuff that wasn't open source and free. It just, okay, that was a market reality. So, so adjust your pitch. We want to get as close as possible and make the most well-designed system. But we're also going to ship it. But we're also going to ship it while we can. We're going to ship you something as close as we get to it. But be very clear about that. And then with the new tablet, ship it. Show us it works.
Yeah.
Show us there's a product before you even start talking about the third product. You're talking about launching a third product, even if you're talking in vague terms. Oh, we're putting out feelers. That's like when you go hang out with your buddies and when one of them's like, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we went back and all had a nap together? Well, dude, that's a weird feeler. What's going on? There's like more behind that than just a feeler. That's a serious question that he just passed off as a joke. You've all been there, right? And then he pets your hair, right? That
has not happened to any of us, but I'm...
Oh. Well, anyway, that's what this feels like. It's like...
if that happens to you.
It's like, hey, guys, I got this phone idea, but I'm just asking. Well, you're clearly thinking about building a phone, and you haven't even finished the first job. The laptops aren't done yet. The binary blobs haven't been solved. The privacy issue hasn't been cracked. The complete OS hasn't been solved. My laptop's fan still blows like crazy. This hasn't been... Your original job hasn't finished yet. And then the laptop, or then the tablet hasn't shipped yet. So this seems like they're blowing their credibility to me.
Well, the other thing that occurs to me is that when you say, they haven't finished the first job, I think that there was a larger market for a laptop than there is for this. And if you think about it, the largest market of users that hasn't been filled yet is something that Librem could have targeted very well and probably been very successful at, and that is, I'm not so concerned about the freedom aspects. I just want a really good, sleek, aluminum, MacBook-like experience that runs Linux. And if it has a couple binary blobs, I can live with that. I just want good performance, and I want it to run Linux, and I want it all in a complete package. Kind of like what System 76 does, except more Mac-like or whatever.
Well, and they could just be more focused. Like if they did two laptops, and they just always had two really great laptops. And imagine if they did that for like 5 years, and they became known as some of the most well-built Linux laptops out there, and they owned that. Then on that reputation, they launch something like this. People be like, "Oh shit, this is great."
Yeah. Well, so there's a market for that we're talking about, and then I think there's a smaller market, substantially smaller, where you have the people that care about freedom and privacy and stuff like that. And I think, and we've talked about this before, I don't think those two overlap at all. I don't think there's a ton of people over there that are like, I really care about privacy.
The people like that are buying these 10-year-old Dell computers like this one right here, or System 76 or Lenovo's, and they're loading Core Boot on them themselves, and they're setting up their own bootloader, and they're buying hardware that might have like a Core 2 in it or something like, or maybe something. They already have that problem solved, and the people that really care about that are motivated to do that.
So then you have that market, and then even like infinitely smaller than that market, you have people that are interested in doing all of that on a tablet, and then a subsection of that market is the people that want to do it on their phones. And when you get to that point, I question how many people are even left, and the people that are left, how many of those people aren't already looking at Ubuntu Phone? And what are they offering that Ubuntu Phone isn't offering? So because they've lost the full stack Linux thing, right? That already exists on Ubuntu Phone. So what are you left with? You're left with, well, you have a more privacy centered OS on a phone with no apps.
But by whose definition? See, I would pose the question to you: if you're going to get serious and you're really going to pitch me that it's all about protecting privacy and freedom, well then, can you prove to me that a dozen-person company is more capable of standing up to a national security letter or an FBI warrant than a 1,000-person company? I'm not sure. I mean, if you look at, let's take an example. We have what was the LavaBit? We have LavaBit as an example.
Yeah.
LeVar Levinson or whatever his name was, I can't remember now. He had to basically shut down his option because he was a small shop. He couldn't fight it. He just had to shut down.
And by the way, good on him for doing that rather than
most people wouldn't. Most people. So you come at me and you tell me you're selling something that's super secure and private. Well, so was LavaBit, and his only option was to eject. So I don't even buy the principle that a tiny company can guarantee me freedom against nation states or crazy police investigations or even motivated hackers. I'm not sure I buy that concept to begin with. So I feel like that's a lost battle. The people that are super crazy concerned about privacy, that are the only people that hold that line for us, they're already out there fighting that fight. And the people that want great systems are going to just have to look elsewhere because they don't seem to have one finished product yet.
Yeah. And to be clear, we are not so much railing on the company as much as we are their strategy in trying to sell some of this stuff. I think both you and I would love a lot of these products that are coming out. And I think both of you would love for this kind of thing to succeed. But both of us having been a bit both of us being business owners understand and have an insight into how to read, a market and then how to respond to it. And neither one of us can really wrap our heads around why they're making the decisions they're making and why they're pursuing the paths they're pursuing and how that's ever going to lead to success.
And I'll say this, and this is the reason probably my number one motivation for caring is they're touching on things here that are house of cards for Linux that we are already have a lot of egg on our face. Look at our successes in the mobile phone industry. What we can pin our hat on is, Android is powered by Linux. Yeah, okay. How far has Ubuntu Phone gotten? How far has Sailfish gotten? How far have all these alternatives gone? They haven't made a dent in the Western markets. So we already have our egg on our face when it comes to this.
Don't forget Firefox OS.
To the bold claims that we're gonna build something that the richest companies in the world and all of the carriers across all of these nations haven't come up with. The bold claim and statement, which is great about open source, but it looks embarrassing when we keep falling on our face. And we keep doing it with laptop hardware. We've finally gotten there. Like, man, you look at how many years System 76 has been finally building up a name for at least a decent hardware manufacturer. They have earned that position so hard. And then you have companies coming around with lots of flash, getting lots of coverage, and they erode at the good work that other people are doing. The fundamental issue here is there is a name on the line and it's open source. And in this case, it might be Linux on the desktop. It might be Linux on the phone. When you get a lot of coverage and then you fail to deliver a few times in a row, it starts to make all of us look bad. That's sort of my baseline concern because the flip side is I'm also super motivated about it because I like everything that they say. I like taking user privacy to the next level and giving me hardware toggle switches. I like the idea of a phone that I could have that would have a real Linux stack on it that would be usable and somebody could actually ship it. And I like the idea of a killer MacBook quality laptop that comes with Linux and having another great choice for Linux hardware. All of those things are super important to me. I like everything Purism says. I don't feel like they're delivering on anything they actually say they're going to deliver on, though. They get close, but they don't finish the gap. Or in some cases, they haven't even shipped yet.
Do you really care about privacy switches? I mean, really?
If I could switch off the baseband and stuff, yeah, I think I would do that. I don't know if I'd do it very often, but I might. The entire purpose of a phone to me is to be connected and not to be disconnected and off the world. If I want to, I do have an air gap laptop that I use for certain things, but my phone, I have zero interest in protecting my privacy on a phone. Like zero, none. That's interesting. And Fergo in the chat room says, what I hear every time I mention Linux is they never deliver. So that's the reputation.
That's not true.
I think there are people out there that make that claim and joke, and they're probably assholes on the internet, but it's people out there that do that. Let's wrap up this segment with just the last part to answer your question. One of the things I ask is, would you be just happy with LED status lights, which I might be, but here's the last thing I like about the toggle switches. Total battery lifesaver. Toggle that switch, I know that baseband isn't drawing power. Toggle that switch, I know that app isn't launching my microphone. At the end of the day, it's my total control over the apps I install. That aspect of it I like a lot, and they're one of the only companies talking about this. So that's why I really would like to see them deliver, but I'd like to see them deliver on a single thing first. All right, that's the Linux Action Show's look at the news. I wanted to wrap my head around what the heck software-defined networking is, why the Linux Foundation cares, and where open source fits all in. So when I had a chance to run down to the OpenDayLight Summit here in the last week of September in Bellevue, Washington, I went. I decided to go down and check it out, plus it gave Noah a chance to take over the mic on Linux Unplugged. So I'm going to kind of break it all down for you, what I discovered, who I talked to. I've got a little mini rover log that I put together just for laughs, as well as an interview with the executive director. But first, I want to thank Linux Academy for making this segment possible.
Whether you're an experienced sysadmin or new to the world of Linux, Azure, and AWS, OpenStack, and DevOps, A sharp skill set is an absolute necessity to succeed. Meet Linux Academy, an online Linux and cloud training platform that uses self-paced video courses and hands-on labs to give you real-world experience for a wide range of skills. Train for your certification, learn the latest DevOps tools, and grow your skill set to do better work. Linux Academy is not just a video library. Our scenario-based server labs and quiz system allow you to learn hands-on. We also have full-time human instructors who answer questions and help you earn that certification or promotion at work. We add new training every week so you'll always be up to date on the latest tech. Sysadmins of every experience level use Linux Academy to stay on the bleeding edge of the Linux ecosystem. You should too.
I'll also mention they have super great download guides and MP3s you can listen to, and I really like their labs because it gives you that hands-on experience so you feel like you know what you're actually doing. It's not the first time you've worked with the stuff when you go do it at work. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Go there, support the show, and sign up for $9 a month. That is not bad. linuxacademy.com/unplugged, and thanks everybody for supporting the show. So OpenDaylight project is an initiative that is run by the Linux Foundation. It's a software-defined networking project, which is a whole movement for an industry right now for building programmable networks that are flexible and responsive to organizations and users' needs. That's a really, really buzzy way to say there are new scales of networking that are simply mind-boggling. You need to be able to provision and adapt on the fly really quickly. And the paradigm for how you do this is fundamentally changing. So that's kind of a good setup really to kind of start, and we can come back and explain more. I was at the OpenDaylight Summit, which is an event to talk about all this stuff, and I wanted to give you a taste of what that's like. So this is my mini rover log from down there. We went to Bellevue, and then we'll come back, we'll talk a little about it, show you couple of the interviews that we got, and then discuss it all. It should be a fun group activity for everyone involved. Let's go back in time to past Chris.
I haven't finished my first cup of butter coffee yet. Don't judge. But it's already time to head out. I think we're going to Bellevue, which is about an hour from the studio. And then, it's either Bellevue or Seattle. I'm actually in the process of still figuring that out. But I'm pretty sure it's Bellevue. But first, gotta go pick up Ange. Time for a car swap.
Proceed to the highlighted route. Then the route guidance will start.
It's official.
Continue to follow the road.
We're on our
2 miles.
We're gonna be there in 44 minutes. We're on our way to Bellevue, not Seattle, which I already made sure Wes knows too. So Wes is clear. We're good there. The cars have been swapped. I've got our equipment, including this monster, which should come in handy. If you know what I mean, for recording interviews. So we're on our way, and we'll report back soon. We arrived, we're here, we're getting on the Wi-Fi, we are registered. Yeah. Now it's time to go look around and see what we can find. I saw down here there's a showcase room, so I think that's where we're going to start. Look at this. This is great. I think this is my favorite part right here. I already love it. Should we go in? I want to look inside. I mean, if you're gonna bring an Airstream, you gotta look inside. Wow, I would not have thought I would end up in an Airstream at the OpenDaylight Summit. Look at this. That's where the business goes back there, but you only get a privacy screen. Yeah. There's those famous Airstream windows. That's pretty great. What do you think of the Airstream, Ange?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, LED lighting.
Good size.
Yeah, so that way when you run on battery.
Look at this huge sign.
Yeah, it's a monster.
That doesn't happen in things like this. That big.
Hey.
Luxury.
Yeah, this is fun.
Extra counter.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a classic.
After walking the floor, we decided to hit the ground. Running, that is, and attended some of the talks to try to absorb as much information as we could, which does work up an appetite.
Now the most important part of every conference, lunchtime. I don't see the name. What was it called?
Lunchbox Laboratory.
The Lunchbox Laboratory. We just finished up lunch, which was delicious. And now we're walking back in there to bang out some of our interviews. Wes, what are your first impressions so far, sir?
Boy, it's complicated. There's a lot of abstract terms. There's a lot of people who are like really in depth in this. Like you're like 3 levels deep in switching, virtualized switching networks. It's interesting. There's clearly people who are passionate, but it's very much like large scale deployments.
I'm getting the impression a little bit it's early days too.
Definitely.
Early days for some of this stuff, but going in the right direction. People are still trying to figure out how it works for them and how they make their infrastructure scale using software networking.
A lot of people who are kind of mid-migration, haven't completely migrated to it, but are trying it out.
Coming into something like this, you kind of have to walk in with a little bit of knowledge because they're kind of starting at a level or two above the beginner level.
Right. Yep.
More of the intermediary to advanced level. Because some of the people that are talking are the engineers actually working on the projects
They're
right
building
now.
Cool new stuff.
Yeah. So first impressions are, it's been educational for both of us, but I don't know if I'm getting as much out of it as I had hoped at this point. But it might just be because it's such a nascent market too.
Yeah, exactly.
What's Ange think?
What'd you learn
Lost.
about network?
Yeah, I don't.
It's got genius.
It does have. It has a layer of genius in it. It helps all of the things talk
Yeah. Smartly.
smartly.
Genius.
Like a genius.
The OpenDaylight Summit ran like a well-oiled machine. It was great to talk to passionate people, and I loved the interviews that we did. Okay, we have reached the end of the OpenDaylight Summit. It's Tuesday. We just got done doing our interviews, and I thought before we left we should do our first thoughts, just sort of our takeaways. Wes, you want to start? Do you have a takeaway?
You know, I think there's an exciting community. Right now it's very business led, you know, kind of what we've seen like the Linux community transition into. This is starting that way.
Yeah, good point, yeah.
But there's a lot of excited people. It sounds like everyone is friends. There's a lot of cross business communication, collaboration. So
Yeah. Some of the
deployed now, but
some of the open source essentials are there.
Yeah.
The collaboration is there, but they're starting at a how do we make this something we can build value on top of right away.
so I think something that, you know, in the next 2, 3, 5 years that will probably explode.
Yeah. What did you think, Ange? Kind of like the businessy stuff, the conference, the event itself.
I thought it was very well put together. Great food that they offered. The decor was really great.
Yeah.
It was all outdoor camping type stuff.
Yeah, that
You'll
was-
see, if you check the Instagram feed, you'll see some pictures that we posted of
Some
things-
money was spent.
Some money, yeah, definitely.
And they had the trailer. That was cool.
Yep, we sat in on a couple talks. They didn't seem as organized as they could have been, and they were shorter, but overall they had at least a very tight view of whatever it was that they were talking about.
And they had decent audio and video set up. Each room had somebody
Yes.
there with a Mac that was doing a live recording of it.
Clearly
With a
professional in that way.
Yeah, and you know, they had a pretty standardized setup, so whoever they had in there doing that really knew their stuff. All of it really felt like, I think one of the things that OpenDaylight benefits from being such a new project is their association with the Linux
Exactly.
Foundation, because the Linux Foundation knows how to throw a party now. That's like one of their top
How
things.
to throw a party, how to grow
Yeah.
a community, how to sustain it.
Yeah, and even on the back end, the communication with the people running the event's been really clear and straightforward, and so it is definitely something that I think would only be applicable to folks that are in this industry that are trying to solve really large networking scale issues. But at the same time, it's fascinating to see something at this stage that's moving from nascent, immature technology to something that people are really deploying now, and and companies like Cisco and Intel and Red Hat are beginning to build products on top of it.
And you may see it in other places, IoT, etc.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You might see it in terms of networking just becomes more ubiquitous and more everywhere,
Right.
and it could be OpenDaylight that's behind some of that, making it possible.
and perhaps a little more genius.
And some genius.
So that's kind of the overview, the highlights. I just wanted to kind of paint the scene for you because I don't know if people know what a conference like this is like. And it's nice because a lot of people are there for work and they build it that way. So there's a lot of enjoyable things, lots of food. They served a brilliant lunch. You didn't have to leave, although we decided to because we really wanted a burger. And so that's the summit where all these geeks come together. A lot of the presentations are given by the people that are actually writing the software. But I now wanted to give you some meat. So this is the executive director of the OpenDaylight project, and this interview is just. It's really fascinating. This guy is super fired up about what he does, and he really has a great grasp on the big picture, why the Linux Foundation cares about any of this stuff, and how it kind of all relates to open source. Go, Noah. Come on.
Not a problem. Basically what happened is if you look about 3-4 years ago, you had a number of people who came up with a real interesting insight, which was just a couple years before that, people had realized that the way that you manage and deploy networks has to change. It has to be software defined rather than defined in hardware, meaning rather than have to manage each box individually, you'd like to be able to have something like Google Maps or Waze, in a sense, that is able to then manage all the different cars and where they're all going. The problem that had happened is while everybody had figured this out, everybody was doing it their own way. Right? So we want to have this universal management, and everybody's got their own flavor of it.
We know where that goes.
And therefore it wasn't getting adopted. And so what I think the big insight was, what we need is a Linux, but of networking. We need one platform, one place that everybody can come together, bring their engineers, bring their technology, and actually get one platform that then everybody can leverage to be able to build their own products.
That makes sense. And I think one of the things that seems like maybe because I'm not super familiar with all, but I was surprised to see there's folks here from Cisco, from Red Hat, from Intel. There is a lot of Ericsson. We just spoke with Ericsson. Tons of interest there.
AT&T, Comcast, American Airlines, Boeing.
So what is it they love so much?
I think honestly, it's two things. Number one, it's the technology, right? It's the fact that you've got major business problems. AT&T was on stage earlier, and they talked about how if you look at the amount of data that goes over their wireless network, 150,000% growth in 10 years, right? So they've got to manage their network differently.
Yeah, it almost seems this problem is inevitable.
Oh, absolutely, right? And so if you look at someone like AT&T, they can go out and they can buy solutions from all these different people, but then they don't work with each other. And so why do they come here? Because there's a technology that can solve a problem. It'll allow them to manage their network better. But the other side is the community. It's the fact that there is no one leader in OpenDaylight. You mentioned a whole bunch of companies. I could add HPE. I could add Red Hat. Really, if you look around the list of companies, you've got 5, 10, 20 companies that are here with a whole bunch of folks, and then you've got a long, long tail of other companies that are over here. And the fact is, this code isn't controlled by anyone. It's built by many different people. And so, just like Linux, the power of OpenDaylight is in the community that we have.
I've been picking up on a sense from a lot of the talks that people are transitioning to this is a real solution that's arrived. We're implementing it. We're testing it. This is what we're experiencing. What are we at? Is there a sort of a transition that's beginning, and what is that?
How long might we be on that transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at open source, and I was talking to an SVP at a large carrier today, and we were talking about the challenge of building a true platform. Yeah. And the truth is, whether you build a platform within a company or you build a platform in open source, it's really, really freaking hard, right? I mean, it's hard technically, it's hard socially, it takes a ton of resources, and you make a few bad choices and you fail. So certainly if you look in the first few years of OpenDaylight, just like any other project, there's the first question, can you get people to care and invest enough? Secondly, okay, you get people to actually invest, can you get them to work with each other effectively? Can you get them to build something good?
Have the right community.
But even then, that still doesn't mean that you've actually solved the problem really well.
Yeah.
So now you need to get people to actually try it. And so that and immediately they try and they say, you can edit this out, but I had one of the big users pick it up and say, this is the biggest piece of horseshit we've ever seen. This is our first release. And then the answer is, okay, so great, that was your experience. I agree, it's a little bit rough. Do you just want to criticize us, or are you interested in actually making it better?
Let's make it better.
And the good news is, you've had user after user after user, from AT&T to Comcast to a whole other set of organizations that have been willing to come in, test the stuff, give us advice, help us improve it. And yeah, four or five releases ago, it may not have been usable. But what you had is by the second release, it got better. By the third release, people were actually doing serious proof of concepts. By the fourth release, you had a bunch of people actually putting it in their network. By the fifth release, now you've got people saying, hey, it's in production. It's been in production for a couple of years.
Here's people that really are using it.
So absolutely, we're turning that corner. The other part is it's not just usage. Those people who have been using it have wanted to contribute back. And so now you've got this sort of wonderful thing that goes on here. If you look at the dominant set of people who come, they're software engineers. The second set of people are network architects. What's interesting is it's not like the software engineers all work for vendors and the architects all work for users. You've got software engineers at users and architects at users. You've got software engineers and network architects at vendors, and they're all working together to try to improve.
Set of problems here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Clearly, there's a platform. Is there any insight into where does the platform stop and the value add, or where you can see, where does the community end and where other people can contribute proprietary solutions?
Yeah, there's a big difference if you look at Linux versus OpenDaylight. One of the big differences is, in many ways, Linux is a product, right? I mean, Microsoft Windows versus Linux, one's proprietary, one's open source, but at the end of the day, you can deploy both. One could argue that maybe it's not Linux, but it's actually RHEL or Ubuntu, but they're not that different. And one of the things that allows that is if you're a Linux developer, a Linux kernel developer, you're not only the developer, you're actually the user too, right? Like, I wonder what a user would want in an operating system. Well, let me ask one of them. What would you like in an operating system? Well, I would want, right? You argue with yourself, you get some good answers, and then you go and develop it.
Yeah.
If you are developing networking software, if you're writing a controller, I can promise you 100% of the people who are software engineers to build networking products don't run production networks. They're two different audiences. And so what you end up having, it's a little bit harder to do that. If you want to go find an end user or a customer, you got to find someone who's different from you, probably works for a different organization. And so for us, when we've looked at what can we be, what should we be, I think our belief has been we don't build products. We build technology. We're building a technology platform that can be used to build products or solutions by a whole set of people. What I think that allows us to do is have a nice separate. The challenge is if we built a full product stack that it went in there, well, it would be hard to add value around beyond sort of just some service and some support. So if that happens, you don't make very much money. If you're not going to make very much money, then I'm not going to put too many engineers. If I don't put many engineers, I'm going to build a product, but it's going to be a shitty product. So instead, what we say is, let's do this. We've got a certain amount of engineers. We're going to get them to come together and build a platform. Lots of people are going to contribute to that platform, but then we're going to make each one of them build a different solution. So you get someone like Avaya who comes in and says, hey, I want to do IoT, but the problem with IoT is how do I create a secure connection to, say, my MRI machine or what is that thing when you're pregnant that you're using to ultrasound, thank you.
Or even just connect to your home systems securely from
in this case, this is for more hospital devices and other things like that. But you look at that, that's a very different use case as someone who's making a big router. But what's interesting, the exact same platform can serve this little tiny device, and you can manage 168,000 of these from one OpenDaylight cluster, or a bunch of $100,000 routers. In the same way that Linux can run a big supercomputer, and at the same time, Linux is in that GoPro camera over there.
Okay, so that is sort of that's the first part of the interview. Are you interested in the next part?
Yeah, oh, for sure.
You good?
The thing that occurred to me, that all I could hear, the enterprise person in me and the person who sells solutions to enterprise places, all I can think about and all I'm hearing is now you can take all of your, instead of having network engineers and system administrators, you can have system administrators that can do network stuff because it's all being done. Essentially as an application on a server.
There's a part to that. I mean, it's a pretty sophisticated technology, and you're also still going to be interconnecting with Cisco equipment or HP equipment. So there's still going to be some But you're right. It takes networking and makes it as manageable as deploying servers with Puppet and things like that. That's pretty cool. Okay, so this next part is probably the part that if anybody's been kind of like a little lost so far, this next part's what actually brings it home. It's shorter, and it talks about how this more compares to open source and the change that's coming across the telco industry, which, if you think about it, is probably you wouldn't think an industry that immediately adopts something that's an awful lot like an open source philosophy and starts working across industry, but that's exactly what's happening. So that's what makes the next part awfully fascinating.
It seems like if you're laying that foundation, maybe the big problem is, if I'm going to buy a switch, I really want to trust the vendor that's going to be able to do things. So if we have a open foundation that we can, that's trusted by the industry, then you can develop a small product that has the backing of a huge number of companies.
Absolutely, and we're already seeing that. Another large service provider was sharing with me the way they're starting to write their RFPs is the first question is, do you leverage OpenDaylight? Do you connect with OpenDaylight? So they obviously, if you've built your product on OpenDaylight, you've benefited from our continuous integration CI/CD environment. But actually, a lot of service providers are building those CI/CD environments so that if you come in with hey, I've got a solution to solve a specific problem, they can connect it and run it against all the other pieces. And because it's all based on the same technology, because we've standardized some of the interfaces that are there, this makes it a lot easier.
This is pretty exciting. And is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I think that there's two parts that make what we're doing really exciting. The first part is the actual technology that we're creating, right? The networking industry has never come together at this scale in open collaboration. And if you look at what we've achieved now in 5 releases in really less than 4 years, that's pretty impressive. But it's the other part that I find the most exciting, I think, as a human being, which is, for so long you're within a company, you work, maybe you collaborate with the people on your team. If you're lucky, you collaborate with people in another division. You never collaborate with people from a different company, right? A few people get sent to those standards bodies, but they end up fighting the entire time. And what you see when you walk around here is there's a kind of magic. We've got 500 people. They work for 100 different companies. And they're not only friends, they not only go and drink afterwards, but they actively work together. Some of them have worked on OpenDaylight for 2 or 3 companies, like we saw in the Linux industry. And I think that what we're showing the world is that we can be real, we can be humans. We can produce something great without sort of the standard dehumanizing command and control model that so many people experience in a corporation. Yeah, people have bosses. Yes, people have to make money. We're not creating a communist utopia here. But at the same time, within a capitalist model, we're able to show that different individuals who are equally smart and often highly opinionated can come together, work with each other, build together, and then go back and compete actively and stay friends.
Wow.
And I think that's awesome.
That's the big picture. Thank you, sir. That was great.
Thank you very much.
Like I said, he was thinking about the big picture there. It was great to talk to him. The entire conference was... Oh, hi there. Hi.
Hey there. That's the ending clip. Now we transition back to live.
Yeah. That was pretty interesting and extremely illuminating. And we had great conversations with a project that's making a Linux distro around this stuff, with the guy that herds the cats for the community and manages the server infrastructure behind all of it, and to 2 different employees from Ericsson and an individual that works directly at the project. She was all of their interviews will likely be featured in Tuesday's Linux Unplugged. So, because Wes will be there with me. That was Wes. That was the other voice you heard, Wes from Linux Unplugged. So he and I will sort of round out our thoughts. And
his name was in the video a couple times, so I'm sure they caught that.
Well, people were asking in the chat room, "Who's that guy?" Hey, Noah, who's that guy? Noah, who's that guy? That was Wes.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
That's all of that is very interesting. And I had done some research. I knew that OpenDaylight was a platform for this, but that gives me a lot more clarity to what SDN and what OpenDaylight and how they kind of work together. But we have a couple people in the chat room that are asking at a very high level, what is software-defined networking?
Well, it is very simply put a way to deploy resources on your network by software. That's kind of the most basic way to understand it.
So you're saying routers and switches via software?
Right, and so you have this middle level that sits here, that this is where all of this, and OpenDaylight isn't the only one, and so if you're looking for documentation on, there's other projects you can look into as well. There's this middle management layer that has to take stuff that comes what they call from the northbound to the southbound, which is incoming network to outcoming network hardware and software, and it brings it all together. So every vendor comes up and works with OpenDaylight in this case. They all have this, so they're all talking the same language. HP, Ericsson, Cisco. They're all speaking the same language, so they can all take the same management commands. They all essentially support the same basic set of features. So you have a set of predictability when it comes to your network hardware, and you can sort of allocate network hardware on demand. So I'll give you an example. Say you're a hospital, and you have this huge LAN that's because you're a big campus, and now you're expanding to doctors at other campuses. But there's a lot of HIPAA requirements and issues here. There's a lot of different industries that have this problem, but this is just someone I think that resonates with all of us. With software-defined networking, you could have data centers and networks that scale across multiple LANs, multiple networks over the internet, using also carriers' back-end networking to facilitate this in a way that is truly an absolute private LAN. So it is a way to sort of accomplish things that we've been working towards. Or it's also, another example would be a way to spin up infrastructure on demand. So say you're DigitalOcean and somebody just turned on 500 droplets. Well, there is a whole networking backend with the virtual machines and discussing, having fake switches and routing between the private network and the hosts themselves. And then you consider containers that also sometimes need to have network addresses and be able to have VLANs and talk to certain networks. That you can use software-defined networking to manage and spin up networking that has the right route set up and the right subnet set ready to go as these machines turn on. So as the servers turn on, the networking infrastructure turns on behind it too.
Sure.
And if you think about if you have a system that can sometimes turn on hundreds of thousands of servers at once, you have to be able to automate some of that infrastructure.
Would it be fair to say, and this is, I'm asking my own, I actually don't know the answer to this. Is it kind of like, if you've ever used GNS3, is it kind of like GNS3 except it actually works rather than just simulates?
GS3?
Okay, sorry. So GNS3 it's a software application where you can load firmware images.
Let me say this. How about this? So part of your questions, all of your questions will likely be answered in the interviews on Linux Unplugged because I ask
there you go.
This. So for example, I talked to a person from Ericsson to talk about data center networks that span like multiple data centers and LANs. I talked to a gal named Heather who is doing it for software testing for different types of routers for Internet of Things devices where they have they have different labs where they're doing real-time continuous testing to Internet of Things devices, and they want to be able to manage that network when these things come online and whatnot. So they're using software-defined networking to manage that. So we've got a couple of different use case scenarios coming up in this week's Linux Unplugged. So listen to that, and it should answer your questions.
All right.
So there you go. All right. Well, that is the Linux Action Show's look at the OpenDayLight Summit and the OpenDayLight project. Links in the show notes if you want to know more. And if you're an audio listener, that mini rover log also embedded in the show notes. And then check out Linux Unplugged on Tuesday for the rest. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. We got some great emails to get into, some important clarifications. But first, I got an important clarification. That's System 76. Your face, dude. Your face. Your face.
Oh, you can always tell when you don't want to do something.
System 76. It's not the spot. It's the feedback that's coming up. But stay tuned for that. Yeah. You know what? I'll tell you though, it's getting to me. System 76 has really gotten to a sweet spot. I think it's pretty obvious. They're delivering hardware like nobody else is really delivering the kind of rigs they're delivering right now. Like the Bonobo workstation's nuts, but the one that really seems to be popular in our audience is the Oryx Pro. It's got the GTX 10 series GPUs, which is nuts. It's got the aluminum alloy construction. It's surprisingly thin. I'm not going to say it's a super thin laptop, but for something that has GTX 10 series laptops and i7 processors, if you upgrade, and up to 64 gigs of RAM, this thing is obviously striking a note with the JB audience. They have great desktops too, including like all-in-ones and Tiny Meerkat and really nice workstations. But the laptops, I don't think anybody's competitive at this level. This is everything I pretty much need in a machine. And the storage options will blow your mind. And to that end, I think it's been resonating. People go over to System 76, they tell them that Noah switched them to Linux. Even if you already run Linux, that's important. And and then look at this. We got an unboxing video. Actually, we got a couple from Samuel. He really took some time, and it took many conversations to make sure that we had the right video. But he had two videos. I'm going to play a little bit of this first one because it's right after he unboxed it.
Yeah, this is nice. We got 15 inches of awesomeness.
That's his Oryx right there.
This has the GTX 1070 in it.
Oh, man.
We got all that. all that there and put on the side.
Look at all that.
Yeah, I wish the camera would focus. Can you focus, camera?
There you go.
Must be Android.
What you got on the back? You got another
Display port.
Yeah. HDMI.
Yeah, on the back. That's nice.
So apparently there's only fan grill on this side.
Look how thin that thing is for the kind of laptop it is.
That's easier to manhandle.
Yeah.
And on this side here, we got our Ethernet, USB 3.
And then like a beast, of course, the next thing he does is it's upgrade time, and so then here he is installing his upgrades. Look at the insides of that thing.
Yeah, one slot right there occupied.
Nice.
With 8 gigs of RAM. And then here's the hard drive caddy, which, as you can see, it's kind of big. So I would assume that is indeed the case.
That's the nice thing about a machine like that. You get serious storage. And then, of course, Noah over there, he's got his Oryx Pro. I mean, everybody's got Oryx Pros up in this business except
everyone except Chris. Chris is the low man out.
One of these days, I'll be broadcasting from Lady Jupes in either a Bonobo workstation, I'm not sure, or an Oryx Pro. Go to system76.com and get a machine designed to run Linux. What I think my favorite thing about it, to be honest with you, is when I nuke and pave, I just am up and going in no time. It's a no problem situation. So the mail comes in.
Yeah, I want to jump into this. So Nehemiah writes in. And
super important email.
He has asked the same question that many of the rest of you are asking. Now, before we actually started the segment, Chris tried to tell me how he doesn't really care that you want clarification to this and he doesn't think that's that important.
No, that's not what I said.
That's pretty much exactly what he said.
No,
watch the raw feed. He's going to say,
here's what I said.
Audience, I don't care what they say and I don't want clarification. I want them to be confused.
I believe that was recorded if you need me to. Here's what I said. I said, this is an email that said, hey, Noah, was this what you said? And then the answer is, no, I meant this. That's literally the entire email, but go ahead, read it.
All right.
Go ahead, read it.
He writes in and he says, no one mentioned Zoho CRM, and I didn't see that was open source. And then he gives another recommendation, which is Odoo, which is open source, and he says, consider it. Now, the important clarification that Chris doesn't seem to think is so important, but I know that is that we weren't talking about Zoho, we were talking about Zermo. And the thing about Zermo is, and why it's important and why we need to take a moment to talk about it, is because Altispeed is fundamentally transforming we're fundamentally starting a sales division, and as part of that, it is all being centered around Zermo, and we have deployed it. It's basically a web-based CRM that you can run on a DigitalOcean droplet and access with a System 76 computer over a Ting hotspot. I mean, it's a great piece of open source software, and the fact that somehow Zermo came out as Zoho means that everyone is now looking at Zermo, which you should be looking at it because it's a great piece of software.
I think in my mind, probably 3 people cared, or 4 people cared, and 3 people emailed in about it. And
Chris at JupiterBroadcasting.com, let him know he's wrong.
And then there's about 395,000 people who don't really care. That's what I think is probably where the ratio breaks down, but good enough. All right, next email comes in, but a heads up about QNAP, which is great because that's going to be I will have a QNAP review upcoming at some point when the hardware comes in. It's from Gordon. It says, hello, Chris and Noah. I just wanted to let you know that my ears perked up when you heard about a QNAP device coming in. He's done some recent experiences too, experiences, whatever, comparing specifically Proxmox, connecting over iSCSI to the QNAP versus eventually switching over to a FreeNAS, and he got much better results with the FreeNAS. He also sounds like he had some back and forth with the support, and so he gave me a little warning sign about his experience with QNAP devices. If you've got a QNAP device, I've talked about one at the end of the Open Media Vault review. You can find the one I'm talking about in the show notes. If you've got experience with a class of device like that, I'd love to hear it. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact and choose Linux Action Show from the feedback and send it in so we can keep on top of it. I said we should take calls, but we ended up running super long. We always get to this point in the show and it's we're too long. I think, were we screwing around a lot on the live stream or was it just a long show? I can't tell.
Yeah, I was trying to get us back on schedule, but
yeah, oh yeah.
You over there with your changing shirts and farting on mic and
I don't even know what to say to that. This is
excuse me is usually pretty typical.
You live over in some sort of Grand Forks reality where a dozen of eggs cost 99 cents. I can't even
50, dude.
50 cents.
50 cents. It was 50 cents for a dozen eggs. I couldn't believe it.
I'm coming over there, Noah. I'm going to spend 6 months and I'll save so much money on groceries that it'll be like that. I won't need
pay cash for a house.
Yeah, I'll just go pay cash for stuff back in Washington. All right, if you'd like to tune in live and see what we wasted so much time on, go to jblive.tv on a Sunday. We do it at noon Pacific. You can go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to watch it live. Also, heads up if you're a patron at patreon.com/today and you're supporting the whole damn network and helping us grow future shows that are audience funded, patreon.com/today. At the $3 level or more, I'm posting our live streams when YouTube doesn't eat them. but we will most likely have a full live version of this. And I'm messing around now with the RSS feeds. Patreon just recently added, I think it's audio only, so we're going to mess with that. But Patreon just recently added RSS feed support. So isn't that a son of a gun thing? So we'll be messing around with making our live stuff subscribable to our patrons. And we'll also probably within the next short period of time have a brand new name for that Patreon page that kind of better represents the fact that you're supporting the entire network. Patreon.com/today is where you find that, and that's where you do that business. Hey, what about your business? Where do people find you online, Mr. Noah?
We are trying to grow and expand Altispeed, and Twitter handles at Altispeed. Again, people that are in the central Wisconsin area, I have a number of people that have contacted me, but if you haven't and you're interested in some part-time work, Monday is the final day where we're going to situate all this stuff, so it's your last chance. If you want some part-time work working on networking and hopefully converting some people to Linux, head over to altispeed.com, click on our contact link, and let us know that you're in the area and would be interested. You can follow me on Twitter at Colonel Linux. That guy's at Chris LAS.
That's it.
Anything else?
You can
Jupiter
follow
Signal at Jupiter Signal.
You got it. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. And we'll see you right back here next week. Drama is the fat of the beefy world. That is extremely deep and insightful and also completely confusing and doesn't make any sense. I don't know about that. Okay, let's start.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by Chris
son of a bitch! You son of a bitch! I'm dreaming of a new segment. Hey, Noah, let's go. Quit screwing around.
There we go. Now we can start.
Kadake. I'm dreaming.
Hey, it's the feedback, and this section is brought. I had to say something to stop Christmas.
I wasn't singing Christmas. I don't know what you're talking about.
You were starting.
No, I wasn't, dude. No, I wasn't.
Dreaming. You were dreaming, and it was white. Don't lie.
No, I was about to say.
You were dreaming about white stuff.
I was about
all
to.
over the place.
No, I was to say I'm about to dream of an Oryx Pro. Have you noticed how many people in our audience are getting Oryx Pros?
I know.
It's ridiculous. Like, I want an Oryx Pro so bad. They're all getting Oryx Pros.
Everyone else has an Oryx Pro. Which you have an Oryx?
I know. It's great. All right, so here we go. Are you ready, darling? What the?
I'm gonna grab my Oryx Pro while you.
I thought your dad was using that thing.
What? Sorry. Just thought I should have it near.
I thought your old man was using that thing.
He is, but I'm changing the hard drive for him.
You still haven't done that?
Well, I did.
He
it,
probably doesn't even remember anymore at this point.
No, yeah, he doesn't. No, I did, but he's in India, so I get to play with it.
Oh, good excuse. You could sell that to me for a decent price. I'd probably take it off your hands for more than your dad's paying for it.
He gave me, well, no, he paid me what I get paid for it. So.
Oh, well, all right, okay.
Well, I only used it for. Yeah.
You charged him a new price for a
didn't charge of anything. He offered.
Incredible. Yeah. Well, that's okay. Besides, I want one with a GTX 10 series card anyways. Psh, I don't want that old thing.